This is a Viva PR podcast.
Ask me in 2 or 3 years' time whether it was a good idea or not. Because we know that less traffic is being handed to media than ever before, and that will continue as more people use Google's AI overviews, AI search, things like that. And if we don't, as an industry, support those things, the media outlets that we rely on for a trade today will not exist.
Welcome to PR in the Real World with me, Tony Garner, and welcome to part 2 of this special with Darryl Sparey, who's the joint MD at multi-award winning agency Hard Numbers. In part 1, we heard Darryl talk about the groundbreaking research that he and his team have been doing. Well, here in part 2, we're actually talking about the practical steps that anyone in the PR world can take to put some of that learning into action. Hang on to your hats. Let's let the talent do the talking.
You've talked about the PR agencies needing to own the budget for AI reputation management. Looking to a kind of a crystal ball and a golden future, what would that look like then? Would you have, specific roles, or would it be a cross-agency thing?
I think it's how these things play out over time, right?
Yeah.
I wish I could source this, because someone said it once at a PR conference I was at, and I've never managed to be able to source the genesis of this this quote. But basically, they said when electricity first became a widely or started getting wide adoption, companies would appoint chief electricity officers because it was seen as such a disruptive technology that someone at board level, such an important technology, that someone at board level had to be responsible for this. It might be that that's not true, by the way, and never let the truth get in the way of a good yarn. But you see this, right? Like there was that whole sort of swathe of time where companies were appointing chief digital officers and things like that, and then in some businesses that then got subsumed back into the CMO role, and there was just a head of digital reported into the CMO or something like that. You see this always when something disruptive and new comes along. It takes a bit of time for everyone to work out, well, is this important enough that we have to have some dedicated functions within the business responsible for this, a function within the business responsible for this, and a head of, and there's something, or is this something that kind of can work cross-functionally within the business that everyone should just be aware of and understand, and things like that. An example being AI, right?
Yeah.
More generally than just AI search, GEO, as we're talking about now. The way I think about it, and the way we've thought about and approached AI within our business, is that we created this going back a couple of years now, but a steering group of people who were really interested in AI and using AI and things like that, which contained, just by the way, actually, one of the members of our team wrote a byline, and one of our team picked it up and went, that doesn't sound like anything that person's ever written before. And we version controlled the byline back to, it was written by, basically written by ChatGPT, and she just chucked a prompt into ChatGPT, got it to write this byline for her. She'd gone and edited a little bit of it and then, tried to pass it off as her own work. And everyone got really annoyed about that. And I was like, that's genius. Like, I'm annoyed that she didn't put her hand up and say, I've tried this as a way of doing it, right? But I was like, let's get her on our AI steering committee, because we definitely want people that are thinking, how can I get AI to save time, effort, or whatever within our business? Obviously, we would never send something like that out to a client, and that isn't how we would approach writing a byline for anyone. But it was a really kind of good use case for how people were thinking about using AI in their day-to-day work. So you would want people like that as part of that cross-functional steering group to then work out what are the best AI tools for all of the different things that we'd want to do as an agency or as a business or whatever. And then basically that become the sort of standard for everyone. So there are now AI tools that we have within the business that everyone uses, standardly across the business. And there are specific AI point solutions that we'll use for specific specific tasks or specific functions. I was an incredibly long answer to your question, but hopefully it gives you. I haven't got a crystal ball, and I don't know how it's going to play out. But it is either going to be something that could sit as a dedicated function, or it sits as something that's a part of activities that other people are undertaking each and every day.
Tell me about the AI steering group that you've set up, because I'm interested just from I've got my agency boss hat on, and we're talking about AI, and we've got our policy lined up, and we're talking to people about how we use AI ourselves. But how does your steering group work, and what do you hope to achieve through that?
Yeah. So basically, it's so funny. I had I was on a US. I was interviewed by a business. They're not a US business, but they have more clients in the US than they have anywhere else in the world. And I was talking about our usage of AI as a business. And I said something to the effect of, well, the first most important thing we did was he wrote our policy for AI and AI implementation within business and how we would use AI. And someone clearly from the States commented, typical European, starting with regulation, everything afterwards, right? So I was like, all right, thanks for that. But yeah, so we did the same thing. So we started with our policy for how we would use AI, and that was written in partnership with key members of that steering group. And then with that steering group we've kind of disbanded it now because it's melted into the functions of the business. Yeah. But the purpose of it, or the point of it, was understand what are the things that we want to do with AI. What are the goes or the no-goes? What are the areas where we are willing to use AI to improve our practice or to, or whatever? And what are the areas we think still need, I hate the phrase like a human in the loop, because I think it's more important than that, but basically should still predominantly be the preserve of a person.
Yep.
There's quite a lot of alliteration. And then that was our sort of guiding principle, with that and with that work. And then as we identified what are the things that we do want to use AI for, then within that group, just going out and finding the best tools to meet those different tasks. And then sharing that back with everyone in the business to say, well, if you want meeting notes, transcribed, then Otter's the best platform for it, or this or that platform's the best platform for it, et cetera, and just kind of working through that as a business. We are now in the process of developing a couple of point solutions using this all sounds a bit like the snake eating its own tail, but basically using Claude Code, an AI coding platform, to develop a couple of point solutions for a couple of very repetitive, usually quite manual intensive tasks that we think we can basically bring some AI automation to make much quicker, better for us.
Yeah.
And then if it works for us, we'll look to potentially commercialize that and make it available to other folks as well.
That's really interesting. You started this conversation when we were talking about data and the name hard numbers and everything, but you have not really got into this idea of data's power to convince people to act and using data day to day, not just for reporting, but to drive smarter decision making in campaigns.
Yeah.
Just tell us about your passion for that as well, and if there are any examples you can drop, that would be great.
Yeah, 100%. I think that measurement and evaluation should be an ongoing, continuous activity, and that one of the problems we get into, or I've seen PR agencies or PR folks get into in the past, is that they see evaluation as a post-campaign activity.
Yeah.
And the problem with that is it's not using data to inform better decision making for that particular campaign. So, hands up. And it's in part as a result of our belief in KPIs and our commitment to our KPIs with our clients. But there will be times when we'll work on a news release for a client that for whatever reason, it doesn't get the results that we might hope.
Yeah. And
with a lot of PR agencies, and having previously procured the services of 3 different PR agencies when I was at Precise, now Inclusive, they would then go, oh well, you know, tried
These
our
things
best.
happen.
These things happen, right? And it wasn't good enough for me then when I was paying the bills, and it's not good enough for me now when it's my agency, right? And myself and Paul's agency. So that isn't a good enough response. So if we don't get the results with the news, well, who did we take that news to? And is there a way that we can change the pitch to make it relevant to a different cohort of media outlets, for example? So if it's a case study for an HR software provider and we went predominantly out to HR trade titles, well, what was the sector of the client that we were doing the case study for? Was it in the hospitality sector? Well, what are the hospitality trades that we could take that out to try and land some hospitality trade coverage for that client, for example?
Yeah.
But then also think, okay, well, that's just news. And what if actually it's just the news isn't good enough, ultimately, right? Well, then there's loads of different other ways to go and get coverage for a client every month. You can get bylines, you can get comment opportunities. There's other ways to hit that coverage KPI for the client. So is there something in that news release that is interesting enough to create a byline pitch for, that we could go out and make a byline for? Is there something in there that creates a platform for us to do comment, rapid response kind of, newsjacking and comment for our clients? Like thinking like that all the time. And that's basically the approach that we take to, that approach is facilitated because we have live dashboards that basically track how many times we've pitched a story out, who to, what's the open rate, what's the response rate in terms of how many people are interested in it that we've then created media opportunities for, and then how many of them have gone live. So we can then say, okay, we would have expected this news release to have generated 8 media opportunities. We've only so far generated 5, so we're going to need 3 from another approach, right? That in its simplest kind of form is how we approach measurement as an ongoing activity. But then within that, obviously you've got all the things that you might think of about content, like the messaging. Is the messaging that we're putting out there actually coming through in the stories that are being written up, or actually are the journalists like binning off half of the stuff that we're saying there, or not pulling out the key messages we want? Well, maybe that tells us that the messaging's not quite right, and that needs a little bit of work because it's not resonating, or the journalists think it's too salesy or not relevant to their audience or whatever. So we then have to think about, so that then informs the messaging and the approach that we take to the client at that level as well. So it's both like what you do, and it's kind of what you say.
It's fascinating, that dashboard idea. I mean, I've seen that in real life situations, but typically around like in a sales room where they've got the targets up, they've got where are we so far, how many leads have we got coming in, and everyone in the office can see the same dashboard, and it's driven by the same, and you did say that your background is in sales, and did it come from there, or and how? And how do people who've come from a more traditional PR background who don't do numbers, how do they take to that kind of mirror?
You've rumbled me, Tony. All I'm doing is I'm taking a sales mentality to and applying it to a different field. In sales, it's really simple, right? And I've run sales functions for effectively 4 different businesses. Okay, you have your target that you have to achieve from a revenue perspective, right, for the year. So then you work that back and say, well, how much invoiced revenue do we have to have in each given month, and how does that build up over time? So that then gives you your monthly revenue target. You then work out, well, what's our average order value? So how many clients do we have to make to make that revenue? New clients do we have to bring on board to hit that revenue number over that period of time? Then what's our conversion rate of opportunities that we have in sales to actual closed won business? And for most of my career, it's been about 50%, at best, probably about 75%. Okay. So you then work that back and you say, okay, well, how many meetings or other, leads or whatever the kind of mechanism that you decide on, do you have to have in a month to create that number of opportunities? And it's normally an order of between 8 to 10 more, right?
Yeah.
Because you got to kiss some frogs.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes quite a few frogs.
Yeah.
And that basically gives you all the numbers, all the KPIs, everything else that you have to hit that, right? To hit your revenue number. And I basically just take the same. Everything's the same. If in the case of for our clients, we have a coverage KPI for many of them that we have to hit each month. Okay, yeah. Well, how are we going to hit it? Well, I think we can hit it with one news announcement. But if the news announcement doesn't work, then we could do this byline pitch and this comment opportunity or whatever, and basically just work it all back logically to it's all numbers.
And it must be sweet though having that kind of collection of data, because you now know how many. Typically, what does it take to do that? It's not a finger in the air job anymore. It's or a gut feeling. You've got some hard data to kind of reflect on. No pun intended.
You nearly got there.
I nearly got there. I went down a data route. Let's
100%.
Yeah, let's switch it back to AI then, and because I remember seeing you quite recently at a PR Moment conference, making a very impassioned plea about the need for the PR industry to financially support the editorial media ecosystem. And I want to just take you back to that point and just explain why you feel that way. And for anybody, any of the doubting people out there that I've given them enough over the years, then why is it important, and why is it important now?
Yeah, now more than ever, because of the great decoupling, because we know that less traffic is being handed to media outlets than ever before, and that will continue as more people use Google's AI overviews, AI search, things like that, and it takes eyeballs and traffic away from quote unquote traditional, online search. Those AI platforms pass less traffic on to media outlets and things like that. So what I've seen lots and lots of PR people doing is taking our research and other people's research and very excitedly saying, this is great, this shows how important earned media is, and all that stuff, which is great. But they don't then do the sort of next logical thing in their head and go, well, hang about. If these outlets exist today, in part because they're funded either by, to a different, greater or lesser extent, ad revenue, okay, which is based on traffic volume, number of people that are,
Yeah.
And any outlet that isn't is even more dependent on all the other sources of revenue that media outlets have. So award ceremonies, sponsored editorial, events, all those kinds of things, right? And other, revenue generating opportunities, right? And if we don't, as an industry, support those things and ourselves invest in those things and encourage our clients to do the same, though the media outlets that we rely on for a trade today will not exist in the future, because they won't be making the revenue that they need to make, or they won't even be offsetting the declines they're seeing in advertising revenue as a result of the changes that are happening, because of AI search and things like that. So we need to, as much as possible, enter awards that are put on by industry, trade, publications and things like that, and encourage our clients to do the same. Look for opportunities for sponsored or other opportunities with those outlets. And if there are events, buy tickets, attend, go along, all the rest of it. And we put our money where our mouth is on that side of things. I mean, you mentioned earlier, we not just out of the generosity of our hearts, obviously, because we benefit from it as well, but we enter widely into the industry awards. We attend a lot of industry events. We either directly or through businesses that we fund. We pay for a number of sponsored opportunities with outlets in the communications space, and we encourage our clients to do the same. We, for a number of our clients, run awards programs and things like that, and we encourage them to do the same. I've seen PR people say, like like publicly on LinkedIn, that industry awards are a waste of time and that they're pay to play and they're things like that. And I'm like, are you so thick that you can't see just 2 chess moves ahead here of how the internet is going to go, right? And those publications that you depend on for, as an outlet for content for your clients, if they don't exist in, 2 years' time, what does it matter if editorial media is, ranks well in particular outlets or things like that? Because there's not going to be any editorial media to be ranked, right? So I think it's really important that we invest our time, treasure, and talent, and that of our clients, into supporting the media ecosystem that we depend on for a living.
And that makes really perfect sense. Can I just, the research that you've done, I'm guessing, is still ongoing, the kind of what are the right tools to use and so on, and it's clear from our dabblings that not all large language models, the chats, the Geminis, the Perplexities, all work in different ways.
Yeah.
When we're looking at it from that AI and PR perspective, is there any advice on which teams should be using for different pieces of content, or just any thoughts generally on how to kind of adapt to that landscape?
Yeah. I mean, it's I could give you a long answer to the question. I'm conscious I've given you a couple of long answers already, so I'll try and give you a shorter answer to this one. I think so. There are definitely. I mean, take ChatGPT as an example. Even within ChatGPT, you've got numerous different models now, and that's growing. So testing it out to see which is the best model for which type of searches and things like that, I think is really important. One thing, a couple of things that we've seen from what we're doing, the work that we do with our clients, if it's helpful, is and I'll be very open and honest and transparent about what we use. For most day-to-day things that folk tend to use generative AI platforms for, we tend to use ChatGPT primarily. It's probably the one that is most widely used across our business, and funnily enough, it's the one that's most widely used by the world out there as well. We use Perplexity an awful lot, particularly for those kind of like deep research, as an alternative to Google for kind of deep research tasks and things like that. Interestingly, about Perplexity as well, I've noticed that the searches that you get back, if you do searches specific to gadgets and gizmos and what's the best laptop and what's the best mobile and things like that, you see the same sources returned more frequently, like Engadget and NerdWallet and things like that. So it's clear that Perplexity has some form of contextual understanding of the industry I'm asking a question about.
Yeah.
With the sources that most frequently provide the best answers to those questions, if that makes sense. So I find Perplexity is really useful for like that kind of, those kinds of searches, and it surfaces, good quality, a lot of earned media, content, but good quality responses, to that stuff. We're using Claude Code for coding, for building our own apps and point solutions to particular things across the business. And then we obviously we'd be fools not to be monitoring AI overviews and AI search on Google really, really closely, because obviously whatever the tech bros on Twitter X are trying to tell you, still there are, billions of people every day going on to Google and doing searches for products, brands, services, companies, whatever. And we need to absolutely be across that. So those are the kind of areas that we're probably those are the platforms and the tools and the things that we're using the most for those different kind of use cases or functions.
And for GEO, for example, because chat has become the kind of market leader, if you will, and it's had more downloads on the App Store than all the others put together, I read last week, although it was, I think, an Elon Musk post that might have pointed that out. So whether it's... Anyway, so... is that the primary focus where you would look to from a GEO perspective to try and get your clients' results in that space?
Yeah. Just as a quick sidebar, right? There was a comedian, and I think it's about a 10-year-old joke. You say, if you go on Channel 5 and you see like the Queen's dead, like on the Channel 5 news, you then go on to BBC One to check it, the BBC News to check it was true. Right? It's an old joke, but there's some truth in that, which is now if I see something online, I have to check it from at least 2 or 3 different sources to just see, is it true? Like, did that happen? Or is that a data point that actually even, exists? Or do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
So there is a definite, the work of validating, opinions it's like that joke in Inside Out where there's the train of thought and it carries opinions and facts. And then there's a crash, and they get mixed up all the time. Who knows which is which? Right? So I think that's a really that there's within your question. There's something which is very true and very difficult about the world in which we're all operating today, right? But in much the same way that in the quote unquote traditional SEO industry, most of the time people would talk about Google, and they would spend, because 90% of search was Google and 10% of search was Bing and everything else. I would definitely, we've spent more time looking at ChatGPT and things like that than probably any one other platform and all of them combined. So absolutely, if you were going to think of like one platform, as a place to start, I definitely think it would be looking at that platform before others. But I think it makes sense to look, even the things that you can find from other platforms can still provide insights that are useful to your overall approach for optimizing how you're showing up in generative AI platforms. So I think it's useful, even if you don't necessarily spend as much time doing stuff for other platforms, the insights that you can garner from monitoring them and then seeing what's appearing elsewhere is helpful to then informing your strategy generally for AI search or GEO or whatever folks want to call it.
And we're going to have to wrap up. We've taken up so much of your valuable time, but I just want you to kind of reflect on one thing that struck me there before the red light came on and we were chatting. You mentioned a stat that your research had found around the Financial Times. And I just wondered if you could share that with people, because I think if nothing else, this should stick with them. And just, it's the perfect illustration, isn't it, of the world that we're talking about?
Yeah, it was desk-based research that I did for the presentation that I did for PR Moment. But I basically found that from another piece of research that I think looked at 8,000 different questions in relation to what's the best laptop, mobile, whatever, and a whole range of other queries. Content from the FT appeared, it was somewhere between 3.5% to 5% within all responses as a citation, right? Well, the FT doesn't represent 3.5% to 5% of the internet, right? No. But OpenAI has done a reciprocal deal for content with the FT, and they are paying the FT money for their content in a way that they're not for lots of other publishers on the internet. And some publishers are blocking their, seeking to block their, search bots. And they do have reciprocal arrangement, copyright arrangements with other publishers. But it would make sense, wouldn't it, if OpenAI was spending tens of millions of pounds a year to buy content from a particular, outlet, for it to in some way preference it within the results that it gives you, because otherwise, if it's just the same as all of the other sources that it's hoovering up for free, like why does that, why does it make sense to kind of pay for it? So I think that is a really that's something that's worth monitoring, and something that we're keeping an eye on for our clients. And there are bodies that are, I think, Fairly Trained is one of them, which is monitoring what are the sources that AI models are being trained on and where training data is coming from, and how many of them have reciprocal copyright arrangements in place or otherwise. So really interesting area to keep an eye on, I think, for anyone in PR communications.
Brilliant. Well, thank you, Darryl. Before we wrap up, and I know I've asked you to get your crystal ball out a couple of times today, but what's next for Darryl and Hard Numbers in this space?
A couple of, thank you for asking. A couple of things. So firstly, we want to keep updating that research that we've done and bring in more platforms, more models, more companies, etc. And we're working with a research partner, Onclusive, to do just that at the moment. So later this year, we'll be publishing the next research report that we've done on this. And then we want to be active in helping both the industry upskill around this area, so that so continuing to build on the work that we've done with the GEO for PR Primer, and we've done an ebook version of that which has more content in which we're going to be promoting and things like that, and that will probably be a resource that again we update and refresh as time moves on. And then continuing to help our clients and our prospective clients with all of these things, because I think the practice then helps inform the work that we do for our clients. Then it helps inform the thinking that we're doing and we're putting out elsewhere. So to just keep that flywheel spinning it is our kind of core focus for the foreseeable future. Ask me in 2 or 3 years' time whether it was a good idea or not.
Well, it sounds like and we're going to have to keep the door open for future visits, so you can give us updates. Darryl, thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate it. It's been fascinating.
Thank you, Tony. Really enjoyed the conversation. Thanks for your time.
Thanks for listening to PR in the Real World. If you've enjoyed this episode, we'd love it if you could subscribe to the podcast and leave us a quick review. Your support really helps spread the word and reach more marketing and PR professionals just like you. And don't forget to share this podcast with your colleagues or anyone who'd benefit from the insights we share. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time for more tips, strategies and real-world stories from the PR frontlines.